welcome to Under My Skin podcast with Dr. Irene. Now, today I'm really excited about sharing this information with you because I know it can single-handedly transform your life, specifically with skin health issues. What you will actually find is a lot of people with various health conditions will find great benefit from adopting this new diet that I'm going to propose that's in relation to insulin resistance. So today's all about insulin resistance and chronic illness. If we look at it in the space of skin issues, we are looking at people with acne, boils, autoimmune diseases, so scleroderma, lupus, eczema, psoriasis. So you can see that it covers a huge, broad group of skin conditions. So it's super important for, I think, take some notes and really open your mind about the impact that you may be having by having insulin resistance and how it's affecting your skin. Okay, so let's talk about normal, healthy insulin levels. So what happens is when we eat carbohydrates, our digestion breaks down the carbohydrates into single molecules of glucose, and that is absorbed into the bloodstream from the small intestine. And so then the pancreas realizes, oh, we've got glucose circulating in the blood, let's release insulin. Now the insulin then comes out and basically stores the glucose molecules in the liver, fat, and muscle cells. So wherever the requirements are in the body, the insulin will go, right, well, you need this amount of insulin, glucose to continue the physiological processes that the cell is doing. So normally we have, get this, normally we have 1 to 2 teaspoons of glucose in our blood. So that's tiny, right? If you actually thought your entire body and you scoop out 2 teaspoons and look at that as single molecules of glucose, that's not much at all. So when we get above that amount, that's when our body goes, all right, pancreas, release the insulin. We've got to get this glucose into its home so we can provide the nutrient requirements the body needs. Now, what happens if we have insulin resistance? Now, insulin resistance is when the body is not able to effectively store glucose molecules in your liver, fat, and muscle cells. So what actually happens is that communication with that cell is faulty, it's obstructed. So it's almost like having the key to the cell, but the key's not working. So the glucose can't go in to the cell. And then what happens is the body releases more insulin because, hey, we're not getting this process working. So we've got to get more insulin. So we find ourselves in a situation where we've got a lot of insulin and we don't have enough insulin, because what's happening is we're getting nutrient deficiencies in the cells because they're not actually receiving the nutrients they need. And we're also getting depletion of the cell. So what does that do? If our body's not getting nutrition, what's that going to do? Make you feel hungry? It's going to crave sugar because your body's saying, we are depleted. We need food to feel healthy. And you're not getting it. Even though you're eating it, your cells aren't getting it. So that's really huge. Now, researchers have identified a link between insulin resistance and psoriasis. So that link has scientifically been proven. But since then, there's been a lot more proven in this world of insulin resistance. So there's been indications that people with insulin resistance are more likely to have autoimmune diseases, cancer as well. So cancer cells are fed on sugar. So the growth that happens from insulin circulating the blood can cause tumor cells to grow. So I once heard a doctor say if he had cancer, the first thing he would do is cut off its food supply and stop eating sugar, which is fascinating because then you would starve the cancer cells. The other thing that happens is that so the cells get depleted, the cells get nutrient deficient, you get increased hunger, increased sugar cravings. You know, when you get tired around that 3 p.m. time, that is your insulin resistance that's peaking up and basically telling you, I need more food. And also, you get poor satiety after food. Now, satiety is that feeling of fullness after you eat. So, let's just say you have your meal, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and then you're going, gosh, I still feel like I need something. I'm not quite feeling full. Want something sweet. That's something I often hear in my clinic. People say that to me. That's an other indicator that you're insulin resistant. So what we used to, as practitioners, look at as being signals of insulin resistance would be, increased facial hair, increased acne, and an inability to lose weight. So we have realized, hey, we can have lean patients have insulin resistance. We can have people with no acne have insulin resistance, but they've got other signs. So it doesn't necessarily have to fit a nice mold. It's really about what's going on in your body and how your body is reacting to this insulin resistance. Okay, so how does it happen? That's one thing, we always ask, well, how? How did this happen to me? It's two ways that we know that this has happened. First way is having a high carb diet. So lots of meals, lots of snacking. So we have lots of carbohydrates in the body. It gets broken down to glucose molecules that's infiltrating the bloodstream. And so what happens after a period of time is we become insulin resistant. And so our body can't actually effectively take those glucose molecules and deliver them to the cells to feed the body the nutritional requirements it needs. Now, the other way is through cortisol resistance. Now, cortisol, as we know, insulin's a hormone, cortisol is a hormone. And this is something else that any person with an autoimmune disease or a skin condition needs to be mindful of. And I'll be doing another episode on cortisol resistance specifically. But basically, cortisol is the hormone that's released by the adrenals when we're stressed. It helps with managing stress. But what can happen is if we're stressed for a long period of time, the cortisol that is released by the adrenals starts to not function as effectively. And so the body gets resistant. Now, when we get cortisol resistance, what do we get? We get autoimmune diseases, we get inflammation, we get neurological problems where our pins and needles in our hands and feet. They're actually quite similar outcomes from cortisol resistance and insulin resistance. And anyone who's been prescribed a corticosteroid for their condition indicates to you you have cortisol resistance, because what it actually is doing, they're giving you cortisol. Cortisol stops infections in the body. Cortisol reduces inflammation. Cortisol keeps the body healthy. But when we have a resistance, then our body can't do what needs to be done. So we get autoimmune diseases and we get, what was the other thing I said? So autoimmune diseases, inflammation, infection, prone to infections, allergies, all that sort of thing. So it's really important to understand that stress, as we know with psoriasis and a lot of skin conditions, actually a lot of health conditions in general, that stress leads to cortisol resistance, which leads to insulin resistance. Okay, so now for the good news. Well, actually, before I go into the good news, let me go through some symptoms of insulin resistance, just in case you're wondering what is linked to insulin resistance and what isn't. Now, as we know, insulin resistance is a pre-diabetic situation. So you might actually have some diabetic symptoms. So thirst, increased urination, dry mouth as well. But then you can also have the inflammation in the body, increase abdominal fat. Now, what happens is we get bigger around the middle and actually increases the fat around the organs in the body, which then make us actually more insulin resistant, annoyingly. You have increased blood pressure, poor memory, and you're tired after eating food. So it could be any food, you get tired, but you also get that 3 p.m. slump where you're looking at, caffeine or something sweet to pick you up again. That's an insulin resistant body. So essentially what we want to do is, so the diseases that can manifest, I'm always running it around to the solutions, but I really want you to be clear as to how we can see this from being a factor by what the body is communicating with us. So I just said to you about the symptoms, now the diseases. The diseases we know, diabetes, now we know cancer. So insulin resistance makes things grow. So that means acne, boils, and if anyone's got a lot of acne on the face, it's insulin resistance. You starve, as you know, bacteria thrives off sugar. You starve the skin from sugar and your skin will heal. You'll see changes pretty quickly. I had boils under my armpits for the longest time and I had no idea. This was when I was studying at university. We didn't cover anything about this in university. I remember speaking to my professor about it. He just recommended some herbs, which I was already taking. So I was like, well, that's not going to do anything because I'm already taking it and getting absolutely no relief. I was even told by my GP I should get my lymph nodes out, so cut them out. Well, that won't be a solution, will it? So I was reading a Women's Weekly episode at my mum's house one day, waiting for her to get dressed because we're going to go out for the day. And I read this comment where someone wrote to the doctor, said, I experienced boils and I don't know what to do. And the doctor said, that's a pre-diabetic symptom, which is another way of saying it's an insulin resistance symptom. So when I saw that, I went to the Diabetes Association and thought, okay, well, what's the diet? What do I do? Didn't get much information there. And then through doing my own research, I came up with my insulin resistance diet, which I'll go through with you in a moment. Okay, so skin problems, as we said, acne and boils, even fibroids, uterine fibroids are a symptom of insulin resistance. So anyone who has got fibroids and is looking to reduce those, definitely change your carbohydrate intake and do various things I will tell you in a moment, and then you'll see a difference. Autoimmune diseases. Now, like I said to you in the beginning, autoimmune diseases, we're talking scleroderma, lupus, psoriasis, eczema. All those skin diseases are autoimmune diseases. It's phenomenal. If you can literally make your body more insulin sensitive, you will literally flip the switch on your skin condition. It might be a challenge because it's not something that you just do it for one day or 1 week and you're finally fixed. I been eating this way for a while, and sometimes I get in these moods and I enjoy my rice. I love eating rice, and then I'm kind of reminded, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. But it's all about managing the amount of carbohydrate intake and all the additional things you can do to increase insulin sensitivity in your body. Okay, so what is the answer? Now, there are multiple things that you can do, and I've written them down here, so make sure I don't miss anything out for you. So the first thing, because we're talking about diet, we need to enjoy a keto diet, a healthy keto diet. So what a keto diet is basically reducing the glucose, so reducing the carbohydrate intake. And we do that by enjoying, let's just say, your plate, right? That's your plate. Half of your plate is your veggies, and the remainder of the plate, a quarter of the plate, which is half of the other half, is protein. And then we've got another quarter left. And so that technically is divided by low GI carbohydrates. And then you could either put more vegetables or more protein, depending if you're working out. If you've done a session in the gym, you can increase your protein intake, or if you've gone for an exercise run or whatever it is, you can increase your protein intake. If you've had a sedentary day and you haven't really done much, then you can have more vegetables. So when you're looking at how much, you might think, well, I don't know, my plate, I don't know what an eighth of a plate is, which is what I'm recommending. Just look at your palm and cut it in half, and that's how much carbs you'd be having in one go. So when I was doing it, I literally was only doing 1 tablespoon when I first started, but that would probably be 1 to 2 tablespoons max. That's all you would have for that meal, right? So if you're having a sandwich, really that's half a slice of one bread. So you would find that in your meal for lunchtime, you would be filling up the plate with other things besides your 2 pieces of bread, because that's just going to get you into massive insulin spike, and you're going to actually be a lot hungrier. You have that mental fogginess, your memory will be sluggish, you're going to be feeling like rubbish within a couple of hours, and you're probably going to want something else to eat because your body's not processed that food efficiently to create the nutrient nourishment it actually should be doing to your cells. So the keto diet, a healthy keto diet. Now exercise, depending on how bad your skin is, you know, if anyone's seen photos of me when I was younger, my skin was literally covering my entire body. And so I really couldn't do much. But if you have just a few patches and you can freely move, if you're going to choose an exercise, I will choose resistance training over cardio, but it is better to do both. Let's just say you do a workout 3 times a week. So 2 times would be your resistance training, and 1 time would be your cardio. And with resistance training, if you can't get to the gym, you can actually use your own body weight as resistance. Because if you go and lift weight at the gym, you might lift 5, 10, 15 kilos, whereas your own body weight is much greater than that. So doing squats and lunges and doing it to repetition where you have that muscle fatigue, and that's where you're actually building your muscle. And that's the element of resistance training. You can use bands. You might have bands. There's loads and loads of videos on YouTube you can tap into for free and watch the instructors give you some tips on how to increase muscle strength in your workouts. But obviously do what's right for you. Make sure you speak to your doctor about what you can do. We don't want there to be an exacerbation of your skin issues. And obviously I know with my own skin issues, there is a reduction in elasticity in the skin. So I wouldn't want you going out and doing all this exercise and then your skin actually hurts because it's cuts. And a lot of patients have told me, you know, sweating can be irritating to their skin. So maybe doing something where you're getting movement, but not necessarily a lot of sweating, and that will definitely help with the health of your skin. Okay, so we've got the keto diet and the exercise. Now, increasing omega-3s, vitamin D, zinc, and potassium. So those nutrients specifically can help with reducing insulin resistance. We've got to take inflammatory foods out. We have to take inflammatory foods out. We are trying to reduce inflammation through making the body more insulin sensitive, but we can't be throwing into the mix inflammatory foods. So what are inflammatory foods, you might say? Well, we've got the spicy hot foods, greasy fatty foods, deep fried foods, keeping food more alkaline. So a lot of green leafy vegetables, beetroot, broccoli sprouts. Then we've got the lean meats, so fish, turkey, chicken, keeping fruit to 3 fruits a day, but going towards the more sweeter fruit versus a sour fruit. So not having any sort of acidic pineapples, tomatoes, oranges, mandarins, avoiding those, and keeping more to what's in season as well. So definitely increasing our anti-inflammatory foods, but reducing our inflammatory foods. The other thing we want to do is reduce our carbs, as I said to you, with regards to the plate portion sizes. We want to make sure we are reducing the amount of carbohydrates, which reduces the amount of glucose that goes into the blood. Super important to make the body more insulin sensitive. Now, one thing that I've toyed around with, and I get, get in my moods about how how good I am, but one thing that is great for you to try is intermittent fasting. Now, intermittent fasting is wonderful for autoimmune diseases. It's wonderful for skin health, and it's wonderful for insulin resistance. So you're literally ticking all the boxes when you are embarking in a intermittent fasting approach. Now, ideally, if you could get to 16 hours fasting, so basically you would be eating from 10 till 6, so 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then you'd be fasting from 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. So fasting means nothing. You can definitely have your water, you can have your vitamins, you can have your herbs. If you're a patient of mine and you've got herbs, you can definitely have your herbs, but no food, no. And you will be feeling hungry, but that's the insulin resistance. So you really have to mind over matter. You have to just drink lots of water to help you through that process. Now, increasing sleep, this is something I talk about all the time in my clinic with patients, is increasing their sleep, getting to bed early. I know sometimes it's tough because you're at work all day, you want to unwind when everyone's gone to bed, you want that time to yourself and unwind. And, I completely understand that uh, having that time to yourself is actually good for your mental health as well. But just be mindful of getting to bed before 11. So get to bed around the 10:30, depending what time you wake up. If you wake up early, you got to get to bed earlier. Having that 8 hours sleep is ideal. And that will actually help with insulin resistance as well. Reducing stress, as I said, really important for the cortisol resistant element, because cortisol resistance will lead to insulin resistance. So we have to make sure we manage our stress levels, positive affirmations, meditation, being in the moment. Don't look too far ahead. Be in the present moment. Super, super important for you to understand that you can actually uh, get more benefit out of your life when you're in that moment and you're not in that feared state of worrying what the future is, or focused on what the past events have happened. Right now, right here, this is what you need to focus on. And finally, eat your veggies. Something that I'm sure you've been told the majority of your life is eat your veggies. Veggies are amazing to help with insulin resistance. Yes, they are a carb, but they're not to the same extent of your carbs in breads and cereals and rice and all those sort of things. Okay, so the the most important thing to know is this can take 3 to 8 months to reverse, and 3 to 8 months of being consistent. Okay. So it's not about, I'm really good one week and I'm really bad the next week. Well, you're right back at square one. Just ignore the first week that you did. You're literally back at square one. So there needs to be consistency, and you need to do it for a period of 3 to 8 months. Now, here's the thing: the symptoms that you will see, or the benefits you will see, will indicate to you that your body is becoming more insulin sensitive. So what are those? Your skin improves, you get less acne. Now, let me tell you my story with the boils. With the boils, as soon as I cut my carb intake down, 2 days, it was 2 days, and they were gone. Like, I'm saying, what happened? I've been taking all these herbs and I've been doing all this stuff, and nothing worked. And yet 2 days of not having the carb intake that I was, because I was having a lot of carbs. I'd have a bowl of rice, or I'd have a bowl of rice and corn pasta, or I'd bake potatoes and have nice big plate of roast potatoes, which were my weakness. So then I dropped right down to 1 tablespoon. Now, I'm not going to tell you I wasn't hungry. I certainly was hungry. I certainly was craving the sugar. I'm not going to lie to you. It was not easy, but the fact that I got that relief under my armpits, it was phenomenal. Especially, I didn't have to go under major surgery to rip out my lymph nodes, which, are essential to anyone's well-being. So really important for us to make sure we keep all these important elements inside our body. So you will notice improvements in your skin, acne, boils, If you're female, you'll notice perhaps your menstrual cycle become more regular, or elements of your menstrual cycle seem to improve. You'll be less hungry. You'll be less desire to snack in between meals. You'll feel more satiety after you eat. So you feel more satisfaction in the meals that you're eating. That's another indicator. You will lose abdominal fat, which will be amazing. You literally see the abdominal fat in your abdomen just slim down. So that is a massive indicator that you're becoming more insulin sensitive. You will lower your blood pressure. Now, I've looked into research and they've said that it can take a year to lower your blood pressure this way. So again, it's not something, you might have 3 monthly checkups with your doctor or 6 monthly checkups. This is not something that's going to happen that fast. It didn't happen overnight and it's not going to resolve overnight. So it will take around a year to see that drop in blood pressure. You will have good stable sugar levels, which you will feel that by not having that 3 p.m. slump, or after you've eaten, I need that sweet thing, I need that fix that I've been looking for. These sort of things will literally dissipate. You will have an increase in energy. Your mental clarity will improve. Memory will improve, concentration will improve, fogginess will dissipate. So all those things, because we are fueling the brain as well. Glucose is the only thing that fuels the brain. So we're not getting the glucose into those cells to fuel the brain. That's why we get that poor memory. That's why we get that foggy head. That's why we get that concentration issues. So it's so important to do this because you'll feel sharper, more alert, more motivated, and you'll be able to tick all those goals that you've got in your aspirations because you'll have that improved energy from simply making these changes. And of course, with autoimmune disease and inflammation, we're going to see a drop in inflammation. We're going to see a drop in the exacerbation of autoimmune diseases. So it's really important. It is, like I said, we're doing low inflammatory foods, well, ideally no inflammatory foods. We're doing low carb intake. We're keeping the carbs. I should mention the carbs are low GI. But having a lot of low GI carbs is just as bad as having high GI carbs. So having a bowl of brown rice is just as bad as having half a bowl of white rice. Now you can get Dungara white rice, which is a low GI carb. But like I said, stick to that 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. That's all you're having in your meal. And you will probably change the carbs you choose because you will notice 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of brown rice is much more filling than half a potato. Who can stop at half a potato? But if you do like potatoes like me, a huge fan, what you would be having is a Nicola potato. Again, don't forget, half the size of your palm. That's the only size. So you'd probably be going that big of a potato. Or if it's a large potato, you cut in half. Nicola potato are low GI potatoes. So you can definitely have that. And that they cook better in the oven. You wouldn't be making chips, but I'm telling you not to have deep fried foods anyway. But even if you're cutting them up and putting them in the oven as chips, they just don't cook as easily. They need more time because obviously they are a low GI, so they take time to prepare. So I hope you've enjoyed this information. Now, I just want to recap the supplements that you can take. So it was the zinc, vitamin C. Now, with vitamin C, be mindful, anyone who's got psoriasis, vitamin C, ascorbic acid, as it's known, is a synthetic, and it actually can be acidic when taken orally, especially when it hits the digestive system. So I usually prefer, if I do an infusion, I do a glutathione and vitamin C infusion, and that's where I get my vitamin C, or through my diet. Omega-3s, vitamin D, berberine actually helps with unlocking that cell. To basically need to unlock it and put the glucose in the cell, and that will help with improving the nutrient deficiencies in the body and the cell depletion. Now, one thing that you might be mindful of or heard about is metformin. So in actual fact, metformin was used in some research for looking at how, and this is how it was identified that people with psoriasis had insulin resistance, because they were given metformin. Metformin unlocks that cell and will help the utilization of glucose in the cell. But here's the thing, we can take metformin, and yes, we are solving that problem of gatekeeper, but we're not solving the problem that's generated the problem to begin with. So we must look at what's caused the problem to begin with, because we can be taking the metformin or berberine or whatever it is that's unlocking the cell, but if we're not fixing the instigator, we're going to find ourselves that we're just reliant on supplements and we're not doing anything to move forward. So we must go through those process of the keto diet, the exercise, sleeping early, minimizing stress, and eating your veggies, and reducing inflammatory foods, and reducing glucose, carbohydrates. All these elements in themselves are going to reduce the insulin resistance, make your body more insulin sensitive, so that when you do eat, you're going to be able to improve the process of absorption from the very important nutrients you need for your day-to-day activities. So I hope you have found this really interesting. I am so passionate about this topic because I know such small changes will give you such massive benefits. Like, this was life-changing for me, and that when I started doing this maybe 8 years ago, perhaps, it was definitely before my son was born, maybe 2 or 3 years before my son was born, and he's 6 and a half. So the results were so quick. I saw my healthy skin look less red. Psoriasis started to go away. This, if you can really stick to it, you will see the results and you will be amazed. And giving you that control back, and making you realize that, you don't have to run to doctor. You have those tools in your own hands, and you can literally make those changes. Now, of course, if you need any assistance, reach out, email me at info@salubre.com.au, and I'll be more than happy to assist you. But this is something that can really transform your life, change your skin health concerns into being healthy skin, and really improving your general well-being as well. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you found it as exciting as I did, and I'll see you next time. Bye.